Erich von Manstein, possibly the best general of World War II. But what do you really know about him? Was he adopted? Did you know about the attack that was going to be carried out against Hitler? What was his salary as a field marshal? How was the investigation carried out by the SS to determine whether or not he was Jewish? Why did they want to send him to lead the Afrika Korps? Next in this program, we are going to see all these curiosities and many more. Starting this time at the end, we are going to comment on one of the most striking curiosities about him, this being that of those who were his greatest defenders when Manstein was in prison after the war. After 3 years since the end of the war, during which numerous trials took place, Manstein's turn came in 1948, when he was tried as a war criminal. After a year of a very harsh trial, Manstein was sentenced to 18 years in prison. This prison sentence was not well received by many, who considered it excessive. Thus, these people who were against the veteran German marshal having to spend 18 years in prison, began to work for him to be released. Two of the most famous people who most helped Manstein's release in 1953 were precisely the British Marshal Montgomery and Prime Minister Churchill, who 2 years ago had been elected again by the English people. Curious, right? The next aspect we are going to look at is whether Manstein was adopted or not. Born in Berlin on November 24, 1887, he was the 10th child of General Eduard von Lewinsky, and the 5th child of his second wife, Helene von Sperling. The latter's younger sister, Hedwig von Sperling, was married to Lieutenant General George von Manstein, with whom she was unable to have children. According to common practice at the time, the Lewinsky couple had decided to entrust their next child to the Manstein couple. Even before his birth, the two families agreed that Erich would be adopted at his baptism. Thus, on the day of this religious ceremony, Erich George von Lewinsky took the surname von Manstein. Both his parents of origin and his adoptive parents came from old Prussian aristocratic families with military traditions that dated back to a very remote time, which took them back to the Teutonic Knights. Furthermore, another of Manstein's mother's sisters later married Hindenburg, making Manstein her nephew. The third curiosity that we are going to analyze in this program is how close Manstein came to having commanded the Afrika Korps, instead of Erwin Rommel. Everything happened after the fall of France, with which Manstein gained great prestige within the Wehrmacht. This prestige was obtained at the expense of Halder and Brauchitsch, who had refused the plan that Manstein had proposed time and again. Thus, it was clear that he represented a threat to them, because he represented the complete opposite of Halder and Brauchitsch. In the circle of German generals of the time, Halder was considered an intellectually exceptional officer. However, in the younger, ambitious, and promotion-seeking Manstein, these men saw a great rival whose abilities were considered superior by many generals. Everything differentiated the Bavarian Halder from the Prussian Manstein when it came to making decisions, both from the point of view of his nature and his mental structure. Because of his methodical and systematic thinking, Halder ruminated at night, considered all possibilities, and consulted extensively with his collaborators before making important decisions. On the contrary, Manstein was the man of quick decisions, made without outside advice. He trusted his intuition more than any methodical or systematic thinking. In this way, and with the aim of getting this competition out of the way, Halder tried to send him to a secondary theater of operations, thinking first of Norway, then of Africa. Finally, in February 1941 they made the decision to entrust him with the command of the Afrika Korps, the German expeditionary force that had just been created to restore the situation in North Africa, after the failures of the Italian armies against those of Great Britain in the region. However, luckily for Manstein, Hitler intervened in this decision, and preferred to cede the leadership of this African army to Erwin Rommel, thus preventing Manstein from exercising command on this front in the Mediterranean. The fourth curiosity of the program refers to Manstein's salary as Marshal of the Wehrmacht. The basic salary of a marshal was about 26,550 marks a year, to which was added an extra payment of another 48,000 marks, which Hitler gave them directly, usually on his birthday. This extra salary that the Führer gave to each of his senior officers was granted with the objective of keeping them happy and at his side. In short, it was like a bribe in order to ensure the unconditional obedience and infallible loyalty of his military elites. In order to see how much this salary of almost 75,000 marks per year was equivalent to, we have to indicate that a skilled worker, who for example worked in a factory making battle tanks, earned about 1,500 marks per year. Thus, Manstein's salary was about 50 times that of most normal people. When Manstein was dismissed on March 30, 1944, and sent to the reserve, his extra pay from Hitler dropped to just 4,000 marks. Although it is very difficult to give the exact figure, these almost 75,000 marks from the time would be approximately equivalent to about 450,000 current dollars. Currently, an American general earns about $250,000 annually, money that can increase a lot if he is participating in a war. This shows us that both salaries are quite similar. The next section of the program takes us to curiosity number 5, in which we want to resolve whether or not Manstein knew that he was going to attack Hitler, as was done on July 20, 1944. Quickly resolving the question, the answer is yes. However, it was only at the end, when there were just a few days left before the attack, that they told him that the objective was to kill Hitler. The first time that Manstein was informed that a coup d'état against Hitler was being prepared, by a certain group of soldiers, was as early as November or December 1942. On this occasion, they told him that if he decided to support the coup, it would be by appointing commander-in-chief of the army, but Manstein opposed it. A few months later, in July 1943, Manstein had a dinner with Marshals Kluge and Rommel, in which they both insisted again that removing Hitler was the only solution so that Germany would not end up being devastated. He left you the program in which we carefully analyzed this meeting in the description. Manstein's response was that in his opinion, the war was not yet lost, and that if a catastrophic situation came to pass, Hitler would voluntarily abandon the leadership of the German armies. Later throughout 1944, Manstein received many more requests to support the coup against Hitler, even more so after being removed from office. However, the German marshal's response was the same again and again, and he told them that a marshal never revolts. The last news he received was from his assistant, whom they had just contacted, who told him that in a few days he was going to attack the Führer. Manstein's reaction was to go on vacation to the northern coast of Germany, very close to the famous Peenemünde base. In this way, if the attack occurred, he would be on vacation and would not be suspected of having participated in it. Finally, when this attack took place on July 20th, Manstein had been on vacation for a week, and he had the perfect alibi to not be accused of anything. Finally, it should be noted that there was practically no high-ranking general who was not approached to participate in this coup, which also includes characters such as Walter Model or Dietrich. Obviously, not everyone was told exactly what they were planning to do. In any case, we can conclude this point of the program by saying that Manstein was one of those who was best informed, among those who did not participate. And with this we reach the sixth curiosity of the program, this being whether or not Manstein had Jewish ancestors, and what the SS determined when they carried out their investigation of him. As Manstein's assistant, Lieutenant Alexander Stauber, commented, Manstein had always suspected that some of his ancestors were Jewish. More specifically, he believed that a great-great-grandfather of his named Louis might have been a very important rabbi in Warsaw, although he was not entirely sure. This matter had been of no interest to the German authorities until Manstein was dismissed at the end of March 1944. Due to the last discussions that the Marshal had had with Hitler, and his lack of ideological commitment to the Third Reich, the SS conducted an investigation during the month of April 1944 to try to determine whether or not Manstein's ancestral origins were Jewish. Ultimately, the SS investigation was unable to determine whether Manstein had Jewish ancestors, and therefore his file was left incomplete. After the war, Manstein's son, Rudiger, stated that like his father, he also believed that they might have some Jewish ancestors but could not prove it in any way. So, what did you think of this Curiosity program about Manstein? Did you know any? If you want to analyze the depth of the meeting he had with Rommel, or the visit that Manstein made to Hitler in Berlin in January 1945, I leave said program in the description along with our Telegram channel.